So, as you may know, making public confessions has long been a ritual of the high holidays. It is in that spirit that I'd like to confess something that has particular relevance today. I am not a fan of the high holidays. I'll pause now to allow those who have just gone into shock a chance to recover. It's not just the holiday's central theological image that bothers me. A wise old supernatural being sitting on a throne making a list of who's been naughty and who's been nice. I'd argue that Santa Claus does a much more effective job of this, and the rewards that he gives out are much more tangible and much more fun. And it's not only that Jews feel pressured into coming to services on these days, even if they'd rather not, or if they do so simply to avoid being grouped with those who didn't show up. Knowingly or unknowingly, we've all accepted the religious view that these days are more important than any others. However, the fact is that each day has the potential to be incredibly important. It is our choice whether we make it so. Remember that old song recorded by Glenn Miller and his orchestra, "Every Day's a Holiday"? It was a big hit back in 1938. Those fellas were on to something. We can find the specialness in every day, whether we're celebrating a predetermined date on the calendar or doing something less momentous, but no less wonderful, like reading a book, helping a client, studying for a test, working in the garage, eating a meal, going to the gym, sitting in our favorite chair, enjoying the sunset, watching grass grow. And it's not just that high holiday services have a well-deserved reputation for being excruciatingly boring. Everyone else's services, that is, not ours. On a personal note, it was the tedium of the holidays that first led me into Jewish music, as I joined the temple choir in order to survive the service with less damage. I became an active participant rather than a passive twiddler of thumbs. Admittedly, much of the music of the holidays is quite beautiful and of great historical value. And it did eventually draw me into the seminary to become a cantor despite my non-theistic outlook, and into a career of Jewish musicology and service leading, and into the spot I am standing now, in front of this very attractive and extremely intelligent congregation. My main issue with the high holidays is that they portray us as sinners. We are told to examine ourselves for blemishes, recall our shortcomings, reflect on embarrassing moments, make obligatory apologies. Sure, doing these things is important for our mental well-being and can help us to better live with ourselves. And you might say that having this built into our calendar is a useful or even necessary reminder. But bringing all this negativity up at once, focusing on all the bad stuff, can actually make us feel ashamed of ourselves or even hate ourselves. Here's the problem as I see it. Because these days are set aside for introspection, we can get the impression that we're off the hook the rest of the year. The holidays allow us to conveniently forget that atonement should be a daily practice. It is unhealthy to put it off until now. Atonement really means at one-ment, as in being at one with ourselves, which is always a nice place to be. We should strive for self-improvement every day. I used to joke when the high holidays came around that I had nothing to atone for. This wasn't true, of course, but if we strive to be decent human beings every day of our lives, we might come close. And if we do the daily work of becoming better people, we won't be tempted to see ourselves as sinners or suffer the harm that such an outlook causes. I'm reminded of Bertrand Russell's book, The Conquest of Happiness, which several of us read last year in our book club. He warned against the sinner mentality, writing in quote, "When I speak of the sinner, I do not mean the man who commits sins. Sins are committed by everyone or no one according to our definition of the word. I mean the man who is absorbed in the consciousness of sin, this man is perpetually incurring his own disapproval. I think we'd all agree that this sort of person can never truly be happy. But if that person were instead to live by the ideals of humanism, which we've so eloquently woven into our Jewish identities, then rather than being self-disapproving, he or she would come to view missteps as openings for self-improving. To rearrange a phrase made popular by Gandhi, hate our sins, not ourselves. Or, quoting a more obscure source, the 1990s HBO sketch comedy program Mr. Show, let's do our best to see mistakes as opportunity stakes. This understanding is, in fact, embedded in the Hebrew word for sin, chet, though the translation is not emphasized enough. Chet derives from an old archery term, meaning to miss the mark. A sin occurs when we go a bit astray, and we usually have another shot, another arrow, with which to try again. Our behaviors can be closer to or further from the bullseye, but through practice, commitment, and a desire to live to our highest potential, we can approach our ideals. We can improve our aim. This brings me to my final point. A basic principle of Judaism is that thoughts and feelings have little value if they are not turned into action. This also happens to be a basic principle of humanism. Having compassion for the poor is worthless until that feeling is translated into helping the poor. Despising bigotry is meaningless unless it leads us to do something about it. And loving ourselves has nothing of meaning if we do not act on that love. We need to lovingly embrace who we are, lovingly accentuate our many good qualities, lovingly work to overcome our self-limitations, lovingly endeavor to improve ourselves, not just during this season of the year, but all the time. Shana Tova.